Despite Facebook's IPO disaster and still struggling stock price, there are still companies that believe wholeheartedly in the social giant. Wildfire is one company that specifically uses platforms such as Facebook to help other businesses engage with and grow their audiences. But why put so much trust in a company that has been under a tremendous amount of scrutiny of late? Well, Tom Reichert, Wildfire's Director of Product Development, is joining us right now by way of Skype to help us understand Wildfire's answer. Thanks for being with us today, Tom.
Great. Very good to be with you, Abby.
Well, great. Well, let's just begin by understanding Wildfire's relationship with Facebook. Could you explain what it does and how the companies really intersect?
Sure. So we've had a very long-standing relationship with Facebook. So Wildfire was one of the earliest companies to be building on the Wildfire platform, or the Facebook platform. We were a two-time winner of the Facebook Fund, which was Facebook's early seed stage investing arm to help build up companies that were using their platform and be able to reach their audience with helpful marketing tools. So since then, we've grown from a handful of people to almost 400 people today, and we provide a complete social marketing solution for brands and agencies. So that involves from building your fan page, managing your newsfeed, running different promotional campaigns, and now social advertising as well.
And I understand that Facebook has actually used Wildfire technology to conduct votes on its privacy policy. So tell us a little bit more about this initiative.
Sure. So we've had a number of different projects with Facebook. So we power, I think, on the order of 10 to 20, 30 pages of their own. So this is something that they've picked what they believe is a trusted partner in order to run their own pages and some mission-critical campaigns and initiatives like you just referenced. So we work with them very closely.
So now let's get into some of the big issues surrounding Facebook right now. Why does Wildfire believe so strongly in the platform, especially given the recent events with the IPO?
Yeah, so I think Facebook has really been the hub of many brand social strategies. One, it has the biggest audience, so almost 900 million people, and also international reach. And I think Facebook's also just been the platform that's provided the most rich forms of engagement for brands. So that's been able to translate into different kinds of rich media that is shared through Facebook, from videos and videos, pictures, to of course many different kinds of applications which are very engaging for users and foster community. So we find that brands are finding Facebook to be will have a lot of staying power. And ultimately, though, the way brands are dealing with now is that they've built an audience, they've accumulated a lot of fans. The question is now what? What do I do with them to really engage them and to enlist them as advocates for word-of-mouth marketing, and to also help them become customers, not just fans or conversation partners, which is a key relationship, but also how do you convert them to ultimately dollars in revenue. Right.
Well, does Wildfire view the events surrounding the IPO as harmful, or is it more of a media hype, in your opinion?
So I think the Facebook IPO had a tremendous amount of buildup. If you look at the kinds of expectations that were around the company, and it's hard to see any company really fulfilling those. And I think when the price did settle in the market, you saw that it was not a huge bump or skyrocket, which a lot of, I think, kind of individual investors may have hoped for, but really, institutional investors. There's been a lot of trading of the shares previously in the secondary markets. There was a lot of information that Facebook disclosed prior to the IPO, helping to clarify the risks and the things in their business which they wanted to put on the table as areas that they saw they needed to shore up, particularly around mobile. So I think there was a fair amount of clarity right before the IPO, which perhaps deflated the price after it came on the public markets. But I do believe in the long run, Facebook is sitting on a mound of amazing data on one of the largest audiences, I think, in mankind's history. And I think if they are smart about how they turn that into dollars through strategic ad products, mobile ad products that could reach across the whole internet beyond Facebook.com, I think they have incredible legs for long-term growth.
Speaking of advertising, it is supposed to be one of the key factors in Facebook's business model going forward. So what can you tell us to reassure both users and investors that Facebook really has a solid plan for being profitable?
Yeah, so I think you're already starting to see signs that they're getting much more aggressive about how they can put ads in front of users. Mm-hmm. And I think what the key challenge is you don't want the users to be alienated and to kind of start to see ad fatigue. Mm-hmm. So before working at Wildfire, I worked at YouTube. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges there was, how do you take this massive engaged community and start to monetize it with advertising? And we saw that when done right, ads are actually value add. They are connecting people with information they care about and entertainment they care about. Oftentimes, content is the ad. And I think Facebook's starting to be more aggressive in allowing advertisers to access the audience on Facebook, but they're trying to do it in a way where the ads are very relevant to the person's interests. Mm-hmm. And one example of this is the new real-time bidding network, which Facebook announced this past few days, which is going to track the user's activities across different websites they visit on the internet at large and gather some information about their interests. But then when that user comes back to Facebook, advertisers can target ads that are going to be relevant for the user because it factors in all those other places they visited before arriving back at Facebook.com. So I think that's a smart way of making ads more relevant. It allows a lot more advertisers to reach the users and gives them a higher comfort level that their ads are going to be worthwhile and well received by the users.
Mm-hmm. You touched on this earlier, but do you see Facebook becoming a critical factor in all online advertising going forward?
You know, I do. I think that's a great point you raised, in that ultimately Facebook does have this treasure trove of data about users' backgrounds and interests and connections with each other. And really, I mean, the big opportunity for Facebook is how to make that information relevant and monetizable for the whole internet. Right. And I think that ultimately Facebook could become the universal login, the kind of the one standard identification that people could carry with them from place to place on the internet and also on the mobile internet. And it's a convenience for users. It allows them to bring their social experience with them. And ultimately, Facebook can take a cut of any kind of value that's created there, whether through ads or other kinds of experiences that use and leverage Facebook data.
What about the fact that GM pulled its paid advertising campaign just before Facebook's IPO? Do you think that has any impact really on the social networks advertising efforts at all?
You know, I think that story was made a lot of impact in the news, but the fact of the matter is GM has actually been continuing to spend money on developing content for their fan page, and that's the kind of thing that Wildfire tools power, even though they're not running ad campaigns. So I think for them, they saw a certain amount of value in just the organic content and the viral sharing. And I've heard many other brands, though, find that the ad component is essential to boosting the reach and virality of that content. GM may have had a big enough fan base that it wasn't as top priority for them at this time.
Do you think that we could see a Facebook version of Google AdSense?
You know, I can definitely foresee that, just given some of the tea leaves that Facebook started talking about publicly.
Right.
And they already have a huge footprint of their social plugins on hundreds of thousands, if not millions now, of publisher sites around the internet. So these are the plugins where you can see what other friends of yours are using the site and be able to like content and share it back to Facebook. And so I don't think it's a big stretch to think about those kinds of plugins becoming ad units, socially enabled ad units, which can help foster viral sharing and higher engagement on the site. So it's good for publishers too. It'll help drive more traffic back to their content.
What about on the mobile side? Even in the company's SEC filing, it expressed some uncertainty about its strategy in this area. But do you see this as a cause for concern, or do you think that they really do have a plan for this as well?
Yeah, I think the mobile advertising strategy is they're starting off with, I think, a very reasonable first step, which is slowly introducing ads to the mobile experience. Ultimately, that's enabling users to get their feet wet, so to speak, and see ads, and it's not that big of a shift. And I think what's going to be more interesting is when Facebook can take the mobile experience and really tailor ads based on where a user is and what they're doing, who they're with. And that's when the ad becomes super relevant and much more interesting. And I think something that will generate greater click-through rates and ultimately better results for advertisers and more revenue for Facebook.
So ultimately, Wildfire really has no doubts about Facebook's business model in the future.
No, we're very bullish on Facebook, and we are a platform for marketers to use not just Facebook but other social networks as well. So I think increasingly there's going to be where marketers will take a strategy to unify their marketing efforts across different social networks. But we think Facebook is been the centerpiece, will continue to be a critical component of any kind of social marketing strategy.
And should we expect to see more from the Wildfire Facebook relationship going forward?
Well, we are working closely with them on several projects. I think ultimately we're also a data-driven company and an analytics-driven company, as are they. And so that's where there's a lot of synergy and a lot of ability for us to make social marketing more relevant and more targeted for users. And Facebook is also going toward the same goal. So I think we're very aligned.
Of course. And specifically on Wildfire, can you give us any inklings as to what we might expect next from the platform? You mentioned a YouTube initiative earlier with me off camera.
Yeah, so just today we're launching support for powering YouTube brand channels with Wildfire tools. So this allows us to help brands leverage YouTube as a presence to create engagement around their rich media content. Video is the most shared form of viral content, and be able to engage users with sight, sound, and motion. So that's one new thing that we've just announced. In longer term, we deeply believe that the consumer needs to get value out of the marketing that they're being shown. So ultimately, we want to do more about personalizing that experience. And as a company that's run almost 200,000 social marketing promotions in our history, we know a lot about what really is exciting for users, the best way to present it to them. So we really want to leverage that deep bench of information and ultimately make it more welcoming and exciting for the consumer when they encounter a brand on a social network.
All right, it sounds exciting. Thanks so much for talking with us, Tom. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. With this WebPro News Report, I'm Abby Johnson.